So people ask me to take a look at this KO Coliseum Learning article. I've never read this before, but I do know what the previous ones were about. It's like at the end of every set, the devs post this like learning in this article. It's basically saying, hey, in this set, here's what worked and what didn't work. So as you guys all know, this set has been quite controversial. A lot of people didn't like this set, myself included. I think it was like a good attempt, but a lot of things went wrong to the point where it wasn't very fun to play. It was a very frustrating experience playing. I'm curious to see if this letter will address all of those frustrations. And if they do, how do they address it? So before I even start reading, I'll tell you what I didn't like about the set and what I did like about the set. I'll start with things that I liked. I liked the unit design. I thought the fighting game aesthetic was very cool. I think there was a lot of cool units to get excited about. I thought Ashe was a very fun unit. I liked Gwen. I thought the Soul Fighter aesthetic was awesome. I enjoyed playing Crystal Gambit. Like, the units and traits like felt cool and like varied, and there were things to get excited about. I can see what they're going for. I thought Fruits was kind of interesting, but the moment I saw it, I was very confident that it was unbalanceable. There's just like too many levers. There's just no way they're going to get it perfect. It's going to devolve into find the best fruit or die. And you guys all know that's exactly what it became. Things I did not like about TFT set 15. The bugs, there were so many. The amount of times they said they made a change and simply didn't was really high, and that's really alarming. There was a lot of small things, like there was like a Rammus pissing bug where like if you had a Rammus on your board, he would like pee. Like there was a sound of him peeing and you just couldn't get rid of it. So you just had to deal with it the whole game. You know, it's small, but then Riot says they fix it, but then it's clearly not fixed because the next game you play Rammus, he's still peeing all over your board. Another change they said was like, oh, RA now overkills 75% instead of 55%. That's a pretty big change. I play RA because I see that change in a ranked game. And what? RA is actually still 55%. They just simply lied. They said they did it, but they just didn't. I don't know how that happens. Like, one time is whatever, but it happened like 10 times a set. There was a very powerful fruit that was OP on Volibear, and they removed it. But it was simply still there. I think it was Assassinate. Or maybe Blink Attack. And then the next patch, they're like, hey, we thought we removed it, but we failed. But we removed it for real this time. And then they didn't again. It took 4 patches before it actually finally got removed. I don't know what's going on there. They then say if you take I'll Be the Legs, you are guaranteed to see like I'll Be the Head. But you're not. You're not. So a lot of people just lose the game because they take I'll Be the Head or I'll Be the Legs, gearing up to take all 3 mech augments and go for Prismatic Mighty Mech and have a win con. But instead the game just simply doesn't give it to them. And then at the end they just removed it. And then a patch later, they just made it a lot simpler where you only take 1 out of 3 and it always works. Like, what is going on for these changes to happen? Right? This is just like bad QA testing or something. After that, it's probably just the balance. Like, it's mostly like a fruits are unbalanceable thing. Right? Stretchy Arms Gangplank, Gather Force Jinx. There's always going to be like characters who just abuse the fuck out of some fruits. There's no way you can make like 25 generic fruits that are like equally good for everybody or close to equally good. Mage Karma was always like a +1 placement if you got it, and like -1 placement if you didn't get it. Gather Force was a must-have. Best Defense was ridiculously OP, but only if you could hit it. There were a lot of builds that like predicated on hitting exactly a certain fruit, and if you didn't hit it, you just lose. Socialite Aatrox, Crimson Veil Akali. They had to have known it was unbalanceable. The moment I saw it on PBE, I knew it was unbalanceable. But that's like where all the frustration comes, because like a lot of really OP bullshit comes from the, you know, fishing for an exact fruit on an exact unit and then being ridiculously powerful. And like if you didn't have one of those, you would lose to someone who did. So that was my frustrations with the set. Let's see if Riot addresses it. We've been doing these learnings articles for a long time now, and throughout that time, we've returned to some of the same issues that have cropped up in the past, like bugs. This isn't to say that we haven't learned from those mistakes. We know they're still there, but it's to call out that we are continuing to work on them, or add color to why they are still appearing. The reality is making a game isn't easy, so we'd rather continue to discuss the areas we're struggling most and keep you updated on those ongoing struggles than ignore them entirely. Plus, there are new things to talk about in these sections. Power-ups. On release, the set mechanic was praised for its dynamic and fun nature, making a champion feel like an anime protagonist. But as the set evolved, the system's complexity, high knowledge burden, and inconsistent options revealed a need for clearer tuning and more emphasis on agency and flexibility. Okay, agree. Flexibility. KO Coliseum was not flexible. Yep, it was not very flexible. While we worked to improve flex play throughout the later patches, we failed to hit the mark for many of our competitive players. As we look to the next set, we're taking extra care to make sure our traits feel viable at lower breakpoints, allowing for wider gameplay. We can also guarantee that there will be far more flexible champions in the next set. Good to hear. Sharp and meaningful design. Reflections on artifacts. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about artifacts. It's really stupid how broken they were. I don't know what the solution is, because artifacts, you hit them on the correct unit, you win the game. You don't hit them, you instantly lose the game. Is that like good for the game? Like the $3 Garen that's completely unkillable is really fun to be the one playing, really not fun to be the one playing against. The Kog'Maw with Flicker Blade and like Radiant Shojin is also really fun to play, really not fun to play against. I would say it's probably equally unfun to play against it as it is fun to play. But like every time you play something fun, there are 7 people who are pissed, especially if it's like a ranked game. So I'm not sure what Riot's gonna do about artifacts. They basically like removed all the excessive ones, or most of them, and now they're like terrible. There's a couple still really strong ones, like the $3 Garen, but like Luden's Ahri was, for example, something that I'm sure they thought would be really fun, but like it very quickly became, you get Ludens, you play Ahri, you don't get Ludens, you don't play Ahri, which made it like really dumb. Yeah, Artifact, Anvil, Portal, and then losing at the beginning because you got something generic like Hull Crusher, and everybody else got really specific things that instantly win them the game was also not fun. I think overall artifacts create a lot of frustration, but while I can say that for like almost every individual fun thing, it is true that at the end of the day, like if you remove all the fun things, the game's just simply not interesting to play. Right? People like queue up hoping that they'll hit an artifact. And if you keep removing things like that, you're screwed. So I don't know what the solution is, but I'm curious to see what Riot does about it. Artifacts have created balance challenges for a while, as their power made certain champions feel mandatory or unplayable without them. Yep. Going forward, we're aiming to lower the power gap between champions with and without their go-to artifact. Okay, sure. If they can do that in a satisfying way, I'm down. Where champions feel like they're viable without it, but like good with it. Bugs, ambitions, content, and pioneer tax. We've created a ton of ambitious new content with more combinations than ever before, but the pioneer tax, concept of things going wrong when you try something new, building something new, combined with compressed timelines and resources, led to fewer finalization days and more bugs. Sure. Lulu, a case study for complexity. Here we tell the story of Monster Trainer, an ambitious but flawed experiment that taught us hard lessons about aligning design goals, managing complexity, and maintaining polish while still pushing for innovation. Okay. Prismatic traits. Some wins, some losses here, but overall we're going to reserve quest-style gameplay for just a few prismatics and be more intentional about it in the future. Okay. I definitely didn't really like the quest. I feel like aiming for 10 Anima Squad in Step 14 was actually really fun. And like, the quest was make it to level 10. I enjoyed that more. Roles, revamped, reflections. This was a success, and we'll be feeling the impact of this system change in the future. Okay, sure. I agree that the roles were good. Anime tournament. KO Coliseum anime style brought new visual tech and personality to the set. Some of the biggest wins here are the top 4 ceremony and the cell shader styling. Agree. Ocean's Ascent. I didn't play it, so I don't have any opinion of it. Power-ups. The set mechanic for KO Coliseum had the goal of taking your favorite champion and giving them the ability to become your anime protagonist with sharp and strong enhancements that can be moved around throughout the game. Here's how it landed. In our survey sent out in the first 2 patches of the set, a large portion of players said that power-ups made the set more fun. In fact, power-ups scored above the anomaly mechanic of Into the Arcane, but below our augment mechanic from gizmos and gadgets, which was so popular that we added it to the game permanently. Overall, players who enjoyed power-ups appreciated having new ways to customize their champions, with novel options like partnered power-ups being noted most frequently. Nice artwork. As time went on, things changed. Power-ups are a dynamic and a complex system. With over 100 options that can be mixed and matched with over 60 different champions, there's an overwhelming amount of possibilities. And even if we got to a world where all these were somehow balanced when interacting with other elements in the game, the reality of the situation is that some power-ups would be far better with other champions than others. Yep. All this being said, the sheer magnitude of combinations is tough to balance, and while having them be completely balanced may be a far-reaching goal, what we should have done better is remove the bad options such as Super Genius, a power-up based on Prodigy's mana regen on Karma, or Killer Instinct on Malzahar, which sort of just gave him mana regen. Yeah, I agree. If they just removed like the bottom half of all the fruits of each individual, the game would not have felt as bad. Although it definitely would have just been like Fish for your Abyss. You're just more likely to hit it. That's more like damage control than good game design. On the flip side, we should also have been faster at removing options that broke a champion's power ceiling, such as Stretchy Arms, Gangplank, Fusion Dance Darius, or Trickster. Yeah, I mean, that's because they don't have the ability to like patch too often. They already be patched pretty often. Riot doesn't like it when TFT has to patch too many times because then it disturbs the League of Legends players. There are too many options that either weren't viable for too long or were way too dominant, creating rigid and meta optimized situations that hurt the fantasy of power-ups in the first place. Yep, it was always just Fish for Abyss once they got solved. Because we had so many power-ups that were generic, we need to be more careful of when we apply a power-up to a champion. You need to apply a similar level of power to all champions of that type. Having a power-up work well on one unit but not another of that same role dramatically increased the knowledge burden on the mechanic. An example where this went wrong would be Fairy Tail Ezreal being much worse than Fairy Tail Kog'Maw, but the fact that it is offered on both champions leads you to believe that these power-ups are equivalent. Okay, yeah, I agree. Fairy Tail Ezreal should not be offered. This is where we needed to dial the scaling numbers on our power-ups while also ensuring that our power-ups list was both intuitive and balanced. Another thing power-ups brought up was how much agency feels good. You had enough options where it was reasonable to fish for the power-up you wanted, but if you missed, it would feel especially bad. Yep. We sort of cut the difference between allowing players to completely select their power-ups versus making them build around the few options they're given in a similar way that augments provide. There are pros and cons to both of these options, but when we examine systems like this in the future, we need to decide more meaningfully where we ultimately stand on this continuum. Okay. I mean, yeah, you definitely shouldn't be able to pick your power-up straight up. You also, it shouldn't feel like a complete RNG check. I think, I'm not sure how they could have done with power-ups, it just seems so hard, but like, they should have been just like really generic and built in a way that like there was no super gigabis fruit on anyone. That's so hard to do though, because like everyone's kit is really different. I think in general it's just too ambitious. I can't think of a way for you to have like meaningful choices that matter, but also doesn't have like a very easy BIS solved solution. With that being said, power-ups were obviously an exciting system for many of our players, so I'd be remiss if we didn't call out some of the more meta learnings we've taken from the system, and I'll do so. I'll break down power-ups for one champion in specific, Lucian. Lucian was a solid unit with simple ability and a novel mana-getting hook, but where this champion took off was the number of exciting power-ups he had. Solar Drift? Ain't no way they're using Lucian as an example, and then their example of exciting power-up combinations was Solar Breath. Like, it was good, early game. I'm pretty sure no one cared about Hero's Arc either, or Power Font, or Classy. Like, more than half of these are, like, lame to, like, generic, and then, like, 3 of these were interesting. Okay, anyway, sorry, I'm nitpicking right here. I just can't believe that this was the example of exciting power-ups. He had a few, for sure, but, like, they listed a lot that weren't actually exciting. Yes, here, Pursuit Lucian was cool, Max Arcana was cool, Mage was alright. Okay, Mage was, like, bugged on him, so, like, I don't even think it was good. But like, if it worked correctly, I think it'd be good. He, like, doesn't gain mana from his first cast, so it's, like, actually really bad. Mech Pilot was good. Drift Duo was good. Many of Lucian's options felt meaningfully different and would give him power in ways that were directly tied to more of a stat, making you want to play him differently. But for every Lucian, there was a simpler Gather Force Jinx or Stretchy Arms Gangplank option where one power felt like the go-to default option. When a power-up like Gather Force Jinx was perceived best only option, it led to the set feeling less flexible overall. Lastly, there's something to say about the fun power-up options we had this set. From fan service to hat tricks, some of TFT's best moments are when we lean in our shared passion for our champions, or when we lean in the absurdity of TFT to make simple things fun. Yes, I think a hat trick was a good example of something that was fun that wasn't really overpowered. I liked hat trick a lot. We've been thinking about this a lot when we look at new augments for our next set and mechanics for sets to come. Oh boy, the F word, flexibility. KO Coliseum was not as flexible of a set as we would like. That is true. It's almost every set recently has just been like lock into your angle really early and just pray that you hit the build. While we worked to improve flex play throughout the later patches, we failed at the mark for many of our competitive players. But let's take a step back and define flex play. For our purposes, flexibility is a playstyle that allows the player on what you hit in your shop, your early items, and your augments. Holistically, it is playing around what the game gives you. While we think about flex play as what should be the ideal playstyle of our highest level of play, it is important to note that the other end of the spectrum, forcing, should also be a somewhat viable approach for casual play. But at the end of the day, both playstyles just want to win. Now to go back to where flexibility missed in the Coliseum. Situations like hitting 3 copies of a Yuumi in a shop and not wanting to play Yuumi 2 because you didn't already have 5 Prodigy or Battle Academia highlights how pre-planned and rigid comp preparation needs to be. Yes, that is true. There was that big thing of like, if you hit Braum 2, a 5-cost Bastion, you're still supposed to play Garen because Battle Academia is just so much stronger than 5-cost Legendary 2-star. Much of this rigidity came from the power of the set's traits, but a lot of it came from hyper-optimizations of the many variables KO Coliseum had. The biggest contributor to these variables was the power-up mechanic, which added another layer of choices to make with limited resources on top of everything else in a regular set. Let's dive into some examples to show this played out. Yumi's ability required ramping from mana via Prodigy, and the true damage component needed potential from Battle Academia trait. This design dictated a narrow commitment to playing Yuumi that needed to be decided in the early stage of the game where you could hold on to vital 1 costs like Ezreal, Garen, or Syndrome more easily. Similar cases could be seen with things like Monster Trainer before we reworked it. You'd need to field one of Lulu's monsters early so you could be on curve with leveling it up. We'd also see gameplay dictated by optimized uses of early artifacts. For example, Luden's Tempest had a singular and solved holder in Ahri, so greatly warping her power that we were forced to temporarily disable to restore power to that champion without making the combo a guaranteed win. It was already close to that. Finally, some rigidity came from power-up system, which would have you commit to scaling and fun fantasies like over 9,000 or max vitality, or etc. At the end of the day, there were a lot of smaller design decisions that made the set less flexible at higher levels of play, and while in isolation, many of these design choices had fun outcomes, Leveling a monster was fun. Stacking random stats with power was fun. Together, they overcrowded true flex play. Yep. Your best play is to always like get like over 9,000 Katarina or something, just force it, even on the current patch. As we look to next set, we want to index on fun and unique hooks, but we're taking extra care to make sure our trades feel viable at lower breakpoints, allowing them for wider gameplay and for our champions to feel viable without deep and specific investment. We can also absolutely guarantee there'll be far more flexible champions in the next set. That's good to know. Sharp and meaningful design. Reflections on artifacts. What happens when an artifact design is so sharp that you have to click it or you can't play the unit it single-handedly enables? Well, in the worst case, when the artifact is that sharp, it's got to get cut. As was the case with Luden's Tempest Ari, but this hasn't been our first awkward run with artifacts. With every new set, there are new artifact combinations that we inevitably have to respond to. That's partly by design. Artifacts are meant to be sharper, more champion-focused items that enable specific fantasies. Wait, you needed a Luden's Tempest to fantasize about Ari? I definitely fantasized about her like in every single game when I saw one Ari. I've lost a lot of LP trying to make her work though. She's definitely just not that good. In Into the Arcane, we had Rapid Fire Cannon Nocturne. In Cyber City, we had Blading Jewel Fiddlesticks. In both those situations, we respond by nerfing the unit, but when we did, those units became borderline unclickable. Yep. For example, once you got Artifact, Blender, Nocturne balanced, base Nocturne was unclickable, even if you saw 3 copies of him early on in a shop. That is true. If you've been following along with our last section, this goes against the flexible meta. So we're slowly and slightly changing our philosophy around artifacts that prioritize the champion's viability without the artifact over the artifact. Instead of buffing or nerfing a champion around an artifact with simpler number adjustments, we want to approach the 2 variables with design changes that make both their power ceiling and power floor closer together. I think it's a good change. With and without an artifact. Good change. While doing so, we have a secondary goal with artifacts to further establish the power budget between core and radiant items. Okay. If we accomplish both of the above, we'll also have made artifacts slightly less sharp, allowing them to be better, albeit less specifically so. On more of our champions. This way, if you are offered a choice of 3 artifacts later in the game, at least one of them should work in your comp. This isn't to say we're going to nail artifacts perfectly next set. Each set brings a ton of variables that interact with our more narrow and powerful artifacts in different ways, and the next set in no way will be immune to this fact. But we'll be more ready to adjust artifact design, and we can even see a future where cycling which artifacts are live for which sets could become the status quo. Bugs, ambitions, content, and the Pioneer tax. KO Coliseum was one of our largest sets in terms of sheer content volume. And while we created a ton of new content we are proud of, it also came alongside a Pioneer tax, the cost of creating something new, impacted by shifting timelines and resources. First, the content. New champions, traits, and augments all met a set mechanic with more possible combinations than ever before. With that, we had a lot more to test than past sets, a lot more combos to QA, a lot more bugs to chase down causes for, and many more novel situations that we couldn't possibly account for. But past the sheer number of content combinations, we also were just testing a new development process meant to make set creation smoother and more sustainable over time. The idea was simple: shift more of our planning and decision making earlier in the pipeline so we give each stage of development more breathing room. But putting them into practice meant compressing timelines in the short term. We had to move many of our key processes, and the one that was the most impacted was our finalization phase. This showed up in less jam days for the team, vital days where we play a set on repeat, constantly gathering feedback data and correcting bugs. For KO Coliseum, it seemed like we were constantly behind on bugs, and when we thought we fixed one, a higher impact one would pop up. It sucked, we felt bad, we worked hard, and we still didn't meet the standards our players or ourselves had. Okay, I'm glad they said we fucked up. I was definitely like pretty upset as a player in this set. I'm glad they acknowledged that they just like dropped the ball. And they kind of explained it here too. They basically said like they are trying a new process in developing sets and it led to timelines getting fucked. So they had less time to bug test in QA, which like kind of makes sense. So what can we say about the future? Well, to start, we have a much more finalization time for our next set and are planning plenty of finalization time for all sets moving forward. Even as I write this now, the next set has already surpassed the total number of jam days we had for KO Coliseum. But past jam days, we're also onboarding a new testing team that should be gradually improving. Oh, they had a new testing team. So maybe they just like weren't as good at catching the bugs and we'll get better over time. I kind of understand that. They are massively speeding up the rate at which they make content for TFT, right? 3 sets in a year was like unheard of in the past. The reason why they did it was because like players are getting better and like the game gets solved faster and faster. So they have to like make so much new content. So they have to like hire more staff and they basically have to have like multiple different teams working on different sets at any given time. From what I've heard, they have like over 3 teams that like each work on different sets. So like if a set feels very different from a previous set, it's probably because like a different team worked on it, both in like design and execution. He's saying they are currently onboarding a new testing team. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They are currently onboarding a new testing team, and that new testing team probably just wasn't as experienced, and that's why the game was so buggy. If they actually get better, then I'd be quite happy. And like, how else are you gonna give the new team like time to like practice besides like in a live set? They probably didn't have enough QA testers and like needed to hire more and like needed to train the new people. As always, this isn't to say the next set will be bug-free. The more ambitious a set is and the more new ground it explores, the more we have to learn to match its scope. That being said, we can say that we are taking learnings from this set seriously, and we are building in additional support structures. We're building in additional support structures to make sure that our next sets are more stable. To add more color on the Pioneer tax, complexity, and even our earlier section on flexibility, let's hop into a quick case study with Lulu. Okay, we can skim through this really quick. Monster Trainer was a fantasy, pick a favorite monster, level up, watch him carry your team. It also ended up being a lesson on picking the best design goal and making it shine. Yes, they tried to do too many things here. You basically were forced, like, they were supposed to be a flexible thing where like you pick Ramus as a tank, Smolder as an AD carry, or Kog'Maw as an AP carry. But then like you also have to level them up. So if you didn't get them early, you couldn't commit to them. Like it became like you're trying to do too many things at once. So it was good that they removed the level up thing. But like I still don't even think they were that flexible. They didn't really fit into that many comps more than like a different 2-star 3 cost. Trainership is a threat-like trait meant to provide utility and scaling combat power. These goals didn't mesh well. Yep, agree. Monster Trainer was the source of hard to squash bugs. Yep, Lulu Carousel bug. I remember that on PBE. I'm pretty sure that she also was disabled on Pandora's bench for a while, but maybe I was just hallucinating it. I definitely had some games where like I was playing Lulu reroll or Kog'Maw reroll, and I hit 0 Kog'Maws the entire game from Pandora's, and I thought it was bugged. But like then I saw it work later on in the set, and like they either quietly fixed the bug or maybe I just got really unlucky that one game. We tried something new. It was hard and it led to mistakes. Classic Pioneer tax. With our tight timeline, it's tough to catch all these, and missing them leads to prolonged periods of bugs. Okay. We should have done better at being transparent with players. Okay. This all led to the end state of Monster Trainer where the leveling mechanic and unique bag size were removed. Yep. Yeah, they basically said they helped us solve the bugs and flexibility issues that were holding Monster Trainer back. This is just like damage control. They reverted Monster Trainer to like its least game damaging state, which I think is fine. Like once you're already halfway through a set, you don't have time to like thematically change it. So all you can do is fix it and make sure it doesn't cause issues. These tough decisions resulted from misaligned identities and missed experimentation with trying to support 3 champion bag sizes with 1 original champion. While it was an admirable dream to have 1 Kog'Maw, 1 Ramus, and 1 Smolder player on their training adventure, the amount of invisible rules and subsequent player manipulation meant the information tax was too high. Lulu and Monster Trainer were awesome ideas, but they need more polish. Yeah, I generally agree. We won't have a Monster Trainer-like champion in the next set. We also won't let this flawed experiment push us away from innovative designs in the future. Prismatic trait reflections. Speaking of new experiments at KO Coliseum, we tried a new way to activate prismatic traits. Instead of just requiring a certain amount of a trait, we also required a quest to be completed. I generally didn't like the quest. I don't know about you guys. I generally felt like they weren't that exciting. Also, I felt like Soul Fighter was a win more. Like, to win 10 fights basically means you have to already be the strongest player in the lobby. I felt like the Star Guardian one was like somewhat achievable. Battle Like Udemy was just like complete RNG if you hit it. You just had to like click all the item augments and pray. This was an experiment worth doing. Sure, I agree. It was good to try. Overall, we're not going to call this a complete success. Yeah, I agree. I didn't really like it. Sure, it solved problems caused by too much access to crest, crowns, and Wandering Trainer, but we won't be repeating this for every trait in the future, just reserving it for some of the more spectacle-focused moments. For our next set, we're sort of splitting the difference, using a new mechanic to synergize with the ways you've traditionally hit Prismatics that should feel more intuitive while maintaining that rewarding appeal of KO Coliseum's Prismatic power. Lastly, the frequency. Interesting enough, the actual rate of hitting Prismatic traits hasn't shifted that much since Cyber City. It's currently sitting between Cyber City and Into the Arcane, which means we're not dealing with those being harder or less obtainable to get on paper, but instead the perception is that they're harder to hit. That is interesting. I definitely thought they'd be rarer. We've got a couple theories around this, but the leading one is that when activation feels more complicated, players interpret that as less frequent access. But the set's still live for a bit, so you have a shot at chasing them before we're on to the next one. Roles revamped. I generally feel like roles revamped went really well. This is the thing where, like, now if you're a tank, you gained mana by being hit. And if you were, like, an AD carry, you did not gain mana from being hit. If fighters don't gain mana from being hit, fighters gain more mana on auto attack. And they gain, like, innate stats. I thought that was a good idea. Okay, anyway. Mana regen as a stat. This just went over well. It was an intuitive change and a long time coming. We'd already been using mana per second as a stat in TFT on a few items and traits historically, and its value as a core stat was just healthier for TFT than starting mana, because it represented consistent power over combat rather than burst at the start, which notably had a larger impact on combat pacing. It's also so nice that attack speed is now not the best stat on backline casters, finally. Yeah, I like that. I like that there's like the auto attackers and then the casters, and there's more of a distinction between them. Tank aggro. A simple rule that tanks win 50/50s on choosing your next target allows players to place melee champions in the front row instead of the second. Another free win. Agree. It was annoying that you had to place melee champions second row, so they didn't get randomly killed. You mean I can place a melee unit within melee unit range of enemies? Yes. Yes, we do. Okay. Updated roles. The changes to roles are interesting because they were supposed to be impactful, while also being invisible. Didn't change the way you play TFT too much. Sure. Surprisingly, despite these concepts being at odds with each other, this has been rather successful. Gone are the days of drain tanks. Yep, agree, where you just go like BT, Gargoyle, and then just like lifesteal forever by taking damage. This allowed us to design fighters more often in TFT, knowing that they're a bit safer, and now dealing chip damage to the enemy backliner isn't a bad thing. Yep, that's really good. It was always bad to just like randomly do a bit of damage to the backline without killing them. That's not to say we landed all the stats perfectly on release. There's assassins, which we're still cooking on, but overall we feel like this was a positive change for TFT, and we'll continue to tinker in this space to find exactly what looks good for each of these roles. As our comfort level rises, we'll be cooking up even more cool stuff related to these changes. Lastly, a bit on the reception for roles revamped. As we mentioned with its announcement, we wanted this to be a largely invisible and intuitive change that we made itemization easier and open up more design options for melee carries in the future. While that feature is almost here and the verdict is in, the overwhelming majority of our Platinum Plus players were aware of roles revamped, whether it's how tanks function or the new mana regeneration stat. Wait. The overwhelming majority of Platinum Plus players were aware? I wonder like if there's a Masters player out there that didn't know that like there was roles. I bet there's probably a couple who just autopiloted to Masters without thinking about it. I mean, it's honestly, yeah, it's a good thing that you can like, the change was made and it makes the game better, but like you didn't have to really think about it. But if you wanted to, you could like look into it and like optimize it harder as a player. That's good. That's a huge win for a system buried in an inspection panel. And for our unranked to gold players, I wonder if there are unranked to gold players that currently exist. Like, when you play TFT, I can say this because I made an account in Japan when I was there, and I played from unranked to about Emerald. My first like 7 games were against bots that like didn't buy units, and like they frontlined like their Sivir and then backlined their Malphite. They also like slammed whatever. I remember like seeing a Gargoyle frontline Sivir. Like, that's what you face until gold. Are there people that like are stuck below gold and can't beat those bots? The only reason I can think of for someone to be below gold is you just didn't play enough games. Yeah, maybe with higher player base, there's less bots. Yeah, I'd be very curious to see like what percentage of real players are unranked to gold. Because I also feel like the system just pushes you to gold because you gain a lot of LP when you win and lose barely anything when you lose. So like as long as you can maintain like a 30% top 4 rate, you'll eventually get gold. I guess if there's like super casuals, I know my cousin plays TFT and he doesn't know what the items do. He just slams every component on his favorite units in whatever order they come in, and he just hopes that it works out, which is really funny. The one top 4 he sent me a picture of was when like his tank items happened to be like real tank items. I didn't know there's rank inflation. There is at the lower end. I mean, that's why like new players can make it to like diamond so quickly in like 20 games. Okay, we're super thankful to KO Coliseum for being the testing grounds for the system, and we're excited to share the new designs we can cook up for future sets. Style of an anime tournament. We know the theme is really important when players are trying out a new set. Yeah, I think the style of this tournament was, like, the aesthetic was really good. Yep, met with mostly positive praise. I think it was good. One of our big goals was to bring the straight out of anime look to our beloved characters, but especially in gameplay. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. Soul Fighter was, like, really fun. What made the anime style truly stylish? The shader. Yeah, I agree. The outline was also pretty good for the aesthetic. This tech isn't one and done. We can bring it forward to future sets. Okay, interesting. I'm down for like other unique visual styles. Oh, they're just showing like how the mech forms to be like anime. Top 4 ceremony. We've always wanted a top 4 to feel like a win, because it is. You are guaranteed plus 10 LP and a huge sigh of relief if you scrape this 4th place at single digit health. Being set in an anime tournament was a perfect time to bust out a thematically resonant top 4 ceremony. Yeah, I hope they do more top 4 ceremonies. Like, they can even be a little bit longer. Like, I wouldn't mind like a 15-second top 4 ceremony that just like showed like the people who made it to the 4th place, and like use your little legends and Like right now, when you top 4 ceremony, it just like shows the top 4 tacticians in any order, and it just shows their chibis. But it could be more of like a podium thing where like, you know, you could show all 8 players. There could be some camera work, panning through like all 8 players on like gradually higher podiums, and like the top 4 being really happy. Could be something like that. Could also be like that when you win, because right now when you win, it just zooms in on your character and they just like do an emote. There's definitely room to like, you know, if you win, you know, give you like a 15-20 second animation. Only one player has to even see it, and it's completely optional. There's room to make it like look fun. Anyway, with our next set, we will be bringing back the ceremony, but with more evergreen agnostic style. Yeah, I like it. At the end of the day, KO Coliseum gave us new tech, new style, more memorable set. Not everything hit perfectly, but the ambition and experimentation got us to the lofty goals of bringing TFT to an anime tournament. And whether you loved it or are ready for something new, or both, we're excited to keep cooking. Sure. I didn't play Ocean Ascent, so I don't have any opinion of that. All right, cool. That was a very long article. How long did that take me to read? Like 40 minutes? But yeah, I mean, generally, it was a good article. I'm glad they addressed like why the set was so buggy. That was like my main thing I wanted to know about. And I generally agree that like the things that they thought were successes, I agree were successes. I would say I agree with almost all this article. They acknowledged where they went wrong. And as a player, I felt really good and validating for them to be like, yeah, we fucked up on those things. And I can agree with them that certain things were a big success, like the roles reversed or roles revamped, and the art style and the ceremony. And I mean, hopefully stuff like the Lulu thing doesn't happen again. Hopefully, if they say that the QA team is going to be better in the future now that they have more practice, all we can do is just like trust them and let them cook. But yeah, I'm generally like happy with reading this article. It gives me confidence that future sets will be good.